Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Endless House podcast. And as you can see, it's a duo. It's not Franny, it's not my deadly duo, but I come up with a name. I don't know what you're going to say about this, Anthony, but Penn and Teller, because we're fucking magic. How about that?
I'll go for that any day of the week, mate. Absolutely. Yeah, it's good to be back on. My house is tidy. All the chores are done after a football-less weekend, but yeah, looking forward to getting stuck into the big preview about the upcoming match against Shakthar.
100%, 100%. And again, the comments are already busy. Ryan Kelly's in, Monty's in, Joe Finley, my wee brother Daniel's in. How are you, buddy? Egyptian
Evening
King,
trips.
Brown Warrior. The whole team's in here nice and early. That's what we like to see, Anthony. I
Oh,
want to
the
start
dream
with
team are apparently getting called as well. You
oh,
can't ask
the
for any
dream
more than
team.
that.
We'll take it. We'll take it. You write the poems and I'll speak them out. Don't worry. No, but we'll start with some news that came out today before we dive into obviously all things Celtic and the going-ons. And are we Australian magician Tom Rogic, the guy who could play with slippers on, made a weird career choice in my opinion and joined West Brom after saying he was homesick? What do you think about that?
Aye, it was a bit of a surprise, but I think there's been since he left the club, there was lots of different rumours. Like you say, the homesick one was definitely one that came up around the time of his departure. But then there was a few rumours, but the kind of things you don't want to hear, that maybe he wasn't doing too right upstairs, and then
Yeah,
there was some chat about that, and then there was quite strong rumours he was going to rejoin Lenny in Cyprus as well. I think Lenny's getting the band back together over there if all the latest headlines are in to go by. I think Gary Hooper's there, Adam Matthews. It's
yep.
if you want to go and watch Celtic in a time machine back to 2012, just get yourself on a plane over to the Cypriot region. But yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those. I wonder if perhaps it's just maybe been a deal that's maybe suiting both parties. I think it's only a 1 year agreement, but yeah, I mean, it's a strange one. There's been plenty of Celtic players have left, and I've found the grass isn't always greener, but they've all, maybe stayed at maybe a higher level. But Tam's done so much that you can only wish him well. But yeah, it was definitely a head scratcher going to the backwaters of English football in West Brom.
100%. And according to Egyptian King, we're in a modern day Stokes and Hooper, so this might be a time machine for some players.
What a partnership that was! Very potent and very successful partnership, maybe add.
100%. And Stokes as well. He was so underrated coming in off the left hand side. I thought he was excellent at that. But I mean, for me, Rogic, like as you said, you can't really do anything but wish him all the best. And I know there was rumours from his close mates and stuff that said he might actually quit football. So it is good to see him pulling the boots back on, albeit for a lesser team. And I probably will keep an eye on him, watch some of their highlights when he's playing and stuff like that, because he's an absolute legend. And Kaiser comes in. Big Tom will stroll it down there for great money, 100%.
Yeah, he's an absolute magician with the ball at his feet, and like you say, with it being the lower division in England, like you say, hopefully he'll get a bit more time in the ball and a bit more to express himself and do what he does best. So yeah, don't be surprised to see West Brom up the top end of the table, thanks to Tam and his magic tricks.
100%. He might do a Ryan Christie and get up to the Premier League at the first time of asking with a team in the Championship. But we'll move on and we'll talk Celtic. And yes, the cancel culture kicked in this weekend for football. We've been all a wee bit down, a wee bit drab. There's been nothing to look forward to. Kids football being cancelled, everything being cancelled, really, to be honest. And I mean, I don't understand what people do on a Saturday about football or a Sunday. My mind was going bonkers. I actually couldn't wait to get back into work just for a bit of normality, and that's not likely. But I mean, there has been lots of rumours going about Brighton. They obviously lost their manager Potter to Chelsea, albeit he's been a cracking manager. I've actually looked at his career really closely, obviously over in Sweden. We've spoke to a few people who's actually worked with him. David Webb, for example, worked over there a time with him as well. He's been on our channel and said great things about him. But Brighton are apparently Anthony sniffing around Postecoglou. Now, you obviously see the rumours saying, well, you see one rumour saying he's a strong contender, and then you see it breaking last night that he's not interested. Then again, it gets sprung up by journalists in the Mail down south, and like this freelance journalists I don't know if they're trying to unsettle him or whatever here, but again, when you see them sorts of rumours, you think back, and not too long ago, Brendan Rodgers jumped ship for Leicester City. Not saying for 1 minute that Postecoglou's in the same kind of breed as him, but you kind of want a bit of security there, don't you? A wee bit of a blanket to fall back on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I must admit, like, anytime there's a managerial vacancy, just more often than not, the mainstream media will put 2 and 2 together and come up with any number apart from 4. Listen, there's no doubt that Graham Potter is definitely a coach on the up, and he's obviously got his big move to one of the top clubs in England, and of course that then creates what a lot of the time is a domino effect, you know. But I think, listen, there would be football owners of clubs down south, wouldn't they be doing their job if they didn't have Ange Postecoglou on their list? But, you know, I've got a list of my own, Stephen. Anyone in a relationship knows that you get your celebrity list. Margot Robbie's top of mine. And I can tell you, I think there's more chance of me getting a date with Margot Robbie than there is with Ange Postecoglou going to Brighton. I totally understand the whole sort of, you know, it's, you know, the Premier League, it's a big club, and by all accounts, Brighton and Hove Albion are quite a well-run club. You know, they try and do things the right way, kind of similar to Southampton, that sort of model. You know, they realise they're not going to be pushing in the top 4 or the top 6 anytime soon, but they're ambitious, and that's absolutely fair enough. But I think, like you say, that there is the obvious comparisons there between Ange and Brendan, but I think they are 2 very, very different animals. I think Brendan, regardless of what people say, Brendan Rodgers was brought up a Celtic supporter. There's no 2 ways about it. But I think we can also say that he's definitely believes that he belongs in the Premier League. That's very, you know, that's where the bright lights can shine on the shiny nashers that he's got, and that's where Brendan believes he belongs. But when you take, apart from Brendan Rodgers, who by all accounts was always destined to go back there, there's not really actually been any Celtic manager, no matter how successful, that have went straight from Celtic to an English Premier League club. You know, yes, Martin O'Neill went to Aston Villa, but you know, he had came from England to start with, and he'd obviously taken the year out. And then you look at, you know, Gordon Strachan, for all he achieved, he ended up at Middlesbrough. You look at the other side of the pond, you know, Dick Advocaat in his first few years at Rangers done great things, and but never got. I don't even think he ever went down to England. Or if he did, it certainly wasn't to any of the top jobs. You know, people will obviously say, "Oh well, of course, Steven Gerrard," but that's more to do with, you know, his fame for what he did on the pitch, rather than, you know, any managerial skills off it. So, you know, I think right now I'm very relaxed about it, Stephen, because I think Ange is cut for a different cloth. I think wherever Ange goes, and this is the thing for all the clubs that are in the world, but we'll focus on England. And yes, it's you know, they've got all the fancy stadiums, and you know, the Premier League tax for every time there's a transfer, and you know, the £1 billion TV deal. But regardless of all that, it's still a circus, a very fancy looking circus, but a circus nonetheless. And for me, Postecoglou, you know, for me, Ange, and not all of these clubs are successful. There's very few clubs that are actually continuously successful, and so we are one of those clubs. And I think Ange looks at a bigger picture and says, you know, what he's doing now, we've won the league, we're back in Europe. But I think his outlook seems to be more of, he wants to get Celtic being as big as he can back on the continent again. Obviously, but we're perhaps not going to be competing in semi-finals or finals of the Champions League or anything like that. But he wants to get it to the point where that's not a ridiculous notion. He wants to keep building on what he does, and on the back of that, you would imagine that domestic success would continue. I just don't. Ange builds things. He builds projects, and you even see that when we're signing players now, it's not just on short-term contracts. It's 4-year deals, 5-year deals. I think he's building something for very much the long term up here, and as you can, you know by his demeanour, he doesn't let things affect him too much, too high or too low. I don't think he looks at the Premier League with any kind of sort of, you know, nose pressed up against the glass, or he thinks the grass is greener or anything like that. You know, he's like, there's nowhere greener than Celtic, put it that way, mate. And I just think at the moment he's just firmly focused on making, you know, no other club has got a backstory that mirrors the manager's own backstory in the way that Celtic and Ange do. I think we're a perfect fit for him, and he adores being here. His family's settled. He's never gave any inclination, even in press conferences, about, he'll maybe give it, a token, compliment or whatever, but he never seems too eager, I think, to go down south. And if he does to go, then it's certainly not going to be for Brighton and Hove Albion. I think, we appreciate we're not the biggest fish in the ocean, but we're a pretty big fish. And compared to us, Brighton and Hove Albion are a tadpole.
You didn't practice that one, does he? As a practice. No, but I mean, I think you're right. He says it with the players. He says if they don't want to be at Celtic, they're going to be shipped out the door. And as I said in the previous podcast, he kind of get that with himself as well. I think if he didn't have a feeling where everything was invested in the Celtic Football Club, he himself would take him away from that situation, because it wouldn't be healthy for him, it wouldn't be healthy for the supporters, and then eventually when the split happened, it would just be toxic. But I want to bring the comments in tonight. Obviously, with the two of us as well, it is great to see. Phil McGinley, the ambition of Brighton is basically mid-table, and they're happy, well-run club and a steady hand in that division. We can't see them challenging for European places, 100%. And Paul Dunn, Big Ange knows he's at a sleeping giant. He hasn't achieved what he wants to achieve, 100%.
Yeah,
and then Monty comes.
Boys, yeah.
Monty, Brendan would have stayed if he went back. That's simple. I mean, he always refers to that. And I've seen the podcast he done with I was listening to it with Chris Kamara and the other guy, I can't remember his name, and they basically said, "Did you think your time came to an end at Celtic kind of naturally, or blah blah blah?" And he was like, "It's basically because the board either didn't want to match the ambition of European football or couldn't afford it." I'm much in the lines of you here. I don't think he would have stayed. I think he's more about the glitz and the glamour side of things in the game. He sees the bright lights and he thinks he can move from Leicester to United to whatever. But one of the concerns is, I mean, you look at the whole Graham Potter situation, and he probably joined Brighton not thinking he's going to catch the eye of a Chelsea Football Club or catch the eye of United when he was linked to the job before Ten Hag got it. And it kind of makes me worried to the fact that, not that Postecoglou will see this, but you look at pathways. There's a clear pathway at Brighton. It was established there by Potter, who joined a major force in European football. Postecoglou, again, if you're kind of looking at it from the other side, could be going, what if I could go down there and give it a go, and I could be linked with a Chelsea or United or whatever it could be, a Madrid or Barcelona. I know there's rumours saying, I mean, Brian Morey comes in saying, did you watch the Gordon Hunter interview and Off the Ball? Very interesting conversation about Ange, Man City, and a Man City executive. I've heard rumours saying he's being groomed for the next person to take over after Pep, which is quite interesting. But when you look at contracts, Anthony, and the only really manager we've offered a long-term deal to is Brendan Rodgers. Obviously, at that time, he was flying the Invincibles, all that type of stuff, trebles left, right, and centre. Success was just pouring through Celtic Football Club, and I think he got a 3-year or 4-year contract. When that was broke, we received £9 million compensation. I think it was in the top 5 of UK football at that time, top 10 in world football for compensation for deals. Do you think it's important to maybe test Ange out? I know he said he doesn't mind a rolling contract because he doesn't want to get comfortable, but you have to show your appreciation to a guy like Postecoglou by at least offering him that contract.
Yeah, I suppose in the terms of the compensatory package that we got, that's probably where the contract, having a longer term contract, does work. Like I say, I did laugh when Brendan did that interview. I have to say, I mean, I know a lot of.
Did you see it?
Yeah, and it didn't wash with me at all. It didn't. It seemed very much. It's very reminiscent of what he did at Liverpool and latterly at Celtic. And I think he's just basically geeing himself up for when he eventually departs Leicester, which I think will be sooner rather than later. It very much, I see a pattern developing with Brendan's career, and good luck to him. There's no denying he's a fantastic coach, but he's playing that card too many times for my liking. He says that it came to a natural end at Celtic. Nothing comes to a natural end in football in the middle of February. And if Brendan had his way, we would have been up the proverbial creek without a paddle, because he wanted John Kennedy and Damien Duff to follow him as well. So, yeah, I take anything Brendan says with more than a pinch of salt. But and I know that folks say, he wasn't backed or whatever. I totally agree. Peter Lawwell takes more than his fair share of the blame. Obviously the main one will always be John McGinn, but let's not forget, and at the start of that window, Brendan was batting his eyelashes to a Chinese club for more money, and then of course we can't say we didn't back him. We broke our transfer record in the same window when we spent $9 million on Edwards. So I think Brendan, most of his whims were pandered to, But he stamped his feet a few times, and you can understand why sometimes the board weren't overly happy with him. But both sides have got to take the blame there, and ultimately, what suffered most was our progression on the park, because we didn't qualify for the Champions League that year. But like I say, Ange for me is a totally different animal, Stephen. And like you say, when you're talking about those big clubs there, the Uniteds, and you have to say just where they are at the moment, Man City, your Barcelona's, Real Madrid. You even look at the way that Ange talked after the Real Madrid game last week, and I think we were all as fans in the right to say, we gave it a hell of a go for 60 minutes, and if a wee bit more lady luck was on our side, it could have been a very different story. But you feel nothing but pride in the performance, and you're hopeful for things to come. And Ange was very much a case of he was disappointed that they lost, not in a over the top way, not in a we should have been 3-0 up or anything like that. He wasn't going overboard, but he was just saying the culture he's trying to embrace at Celtic now is that you should be disappointed for coming away with a defeat, regardless of who the opposition is and whatever the competition is. And I just think he sees us as a Man United or a Liverpool. He gets why there was a time when our names literally were mentioned in the same breath as those guys, and he, I think, is determined to get us back into some sort of going back to that kind of return to those sort of glory days. And we're very early still in that process. We're maybe further ahead than what we thought we were going to be. But the way we're playing football at the moment, it's amazing to watch. And I'm confident he'll be here for the hopefully a long time yet. But in terms of, like you say, the contract thing is a fair point. It is, but perhaps just to give the club some security, if anything else, that they would get a hell of a good financial package ready to go, because my God, he's worth it.
Oh, he's fantastic. And I'm not saying obviously that these rumours are true, but they have been up and coming the last obviously week or so since Graham Potter left, and a lot of journalists have been reporting the fact that he's apparently on a free-man shortlist. And you heard that with the whole Eddie Howe debacle, and who was on our shortlist turned out to be no one. Then Postecoglou turned up and was their saviour, and it's absolutely fantastic that he's still with us, and hopefully in the future too. I think this is a great point, Anthony. We sign our best players on the 4 to 5 year contracts. We should do the same with the manager and lock in the compensation package should he leave. And I think you kind of nailed that when you said kind of security, bringing that money in again, and then you can look for a replacement. But the way you look at it, and I think Joe Finley said it earlier in the comments. Sorry, Joe, for knocking back, but he said take this as a compliment that sides are looking at Postecoglou. They laughed at him when he first came in a year ago. Alan Brazil, that famous TalkSport interview, he was like, "Who's this guy?" Can't even say his name. Made fun of him on the podcast or whatever he was on at that time. You got journalists coming out saying this guy don't have the right coaching badges. This guy won't make it. You won't have the patience for his style. It takes 4 years, whatever it was, exaggerated to kick in. But you look at it now, Anthony, and the big players down south, they're sniffing up here. So what does that really say?
Yeah, it's none what, like you say, it's an absolute compliment to the belief in his own ability and the evidence, the success we've had already. I think he's been a breath of fresh air up here for day one, really, since he came and they sat down that first press conference. And Willie often talks about how he felt completely, everything's going to be all right here. And then obviously, in the same week we had that famous mic'd up training session, which has become pretty legendary. And I just think he's happy here. There was always, when you look back, that kind of sense that Brendan always kind of had, maybe not one foot out the door, but he always was looking over the water, shall we say, to see how things were going down south. Whereas I think Ange is just fully focused on getting them. On doing the best they can for Celtic. I'm probably sounding like I'm having a lot of goes here at Brendan Rodgers. I do really. I've got a lot of time for Brendan Rodgers. How could you not? He won 7 trophies out of 7, and it's just one of those things. He's made his decision. He went down to Leicester. He's had some good success there, but I don't think Ange will be following him down south anytime soon.
Yeah, Michael McDonald here comes in talking with Matt LeBlanc and tonight is non-shaven Tommy Sheridan. But
Well,
I do,
I can't
I
really
do what
say any more than that, can you? Yeah.
Shay
Well,
67
Tommy.
with a point there reminds me of O'Neill in a way that he won't walk out until he feels the job has been done. 100%. O'Neill is that kind of strong-headed character, much like Ange is. Again, bringing the comments up here, Cammy boy. Ange is just an easy name to link to any job in a bigger league. Yeah, I like the quotation marks because that does my head in when that happens. Joe Finley, an interesting one. Has Ange added scouts at Celtic because honestly the age potential and things have been top drawer with success, and obviously you don't really look at that. Do you know what I mean? The whole the signing situation at Celtic Football Club, most of them that we can call an signing have been successful. And you look at the scout department, and I know we added a guy from Benfica to do the analytic side of things and a new fitness coach, and he's brought in Harry Kuehl. But it's testament to him that he can look at a player and be like, he'll make it. And so far, that there for me is like worth gold dust. Because if you go to a club and you can have that eye for a player and very often not make a mistake, again, that's more value for money there, isn't it?
Absolutely, and you look at the type of way that the signings that we've made, they've been so varied in their, even just the geography of where they've came from. Is obviously when he first came, he signed Kyogo. That he knew that was the top guy for the J League, and he knew that he had to get him in. That was his first big signing. But then you look from everywhere to sort of from Lil Abada to Matt O'Reilly. It's all completely different types of football, different divisions. But he's managed to get them all working coherently into this, incredibly well-oiled machine that's just steamrolling over everyone domestically at the minute, and is more than capable of giving the European champions a hell of a fright at home as well. So, considering where we've came from, we've said that a few times, Stephen, but where we've came from this time last year to now, it's night and day. And like you say, it's just a compliment, and it's just testament to Ange and his incredible abilities as a manager.
Yeah, and Brian Warrior, quick to not let me forget, Lowell Jr. was added from the City Group 100%, and I think he's been actually vital because he knows what way Postecoglou works from his time in Japan. So again, merging them relationships, regardless of the second name, I don't really care in this instance. It's working. Yeah. We'll keep it like that, and we're happy, and we kind of move on from it as well. And also want to let people know we're going to have a brand new show on the End of the Cells podcast. It's going to be a bi-weekly show every second Thursday, and it's going to be called Statstrap. It's me teaming up with Tony McLaughlin from Celtic Trends. I'm sure you've seen him on Twitter. He knows his stuff about data analytics, expected goals, player performances, getting right into player profiles. So what we'll do with that, we'll look back into games that happened previously. We'll go in depth in them, all that type of stuff. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be fun. And thank you, Tony, for agreeing to do it with ourselves. It's going to be fantastic. So next Thursday, Tony McLaughlin, Celtic Trends, it should be happening. But if anything else happens in the meantime, I'll let you all know. And we'll move on, Anthony, to the football. The football's back. We've seen all the announcements today that football's going to resume as normal. The UEFA Champions League, I don't think they were actually given an inch in terms of what was going to be happening. So we knew the Celtic and Shakthar game was going to happen. And we look at it. I want to touch on one controversial point before we kind of go into the game itself. And domestic football was cancelled. And could that play into our hands a wee bit in terms of more preparation for a vital game, getting the players fit, firing again, kind of bringing their energy levels up? Another week of training, as Postecoglou would say, on the training field with the likes of Haksabanovic, the likes of Hatate again. Could it play into our hands?
It possibly could, yeah, because you even take into account, regardless of how well we're playing at the moment and the depth of squad that we have, we've just came off a massive derby win, and then straight after that, a matter of days, you're playing the European champions. They wouldn't be human if there wasn't, that adrenaline. Perhaps could have wore off. They still had another game to go at Livingston, and then you got to go again on an away trip to Europe. And we all know all the circumstances there. We're playing a Ukrainian team in Poland because of all the horrific circumstances that are happening over there. So yeah, they're potentially just being able to take stock for a brief. You might even say, does it help Kyogo just get that little bit, back to fitness as well after his injury in the derby? Exactly. So it very much could work in our favour, mate. Although you know what it's like, it could end up very much going the other way, and they're they've lost that rhythm, so to speak, because you hear a lot of these ex-players say it, that a lot of the time, especially, they don't want to be rested or anything like that. They just want to keep going. Once their bodies get in that sort of rhythm, they just want to keep going. So it could go one of two ways, but for a few reasons, Wednesday night will probably be, it's a strange atmosphere. It's just it's sad that that's just the way things are at the moment. But I suppose in one way it's just great that Shakhtar are able to compete at all.
Exactly.
But hopefully they'll be back in their own stadium and being able to compete from the Ukraine sooner rather than later.
I mean, like Magranda, I know he's watching along here, so welcome again. He's very big on momentum. And he always says to me, he feels like there's a dip when we don't play midweek. And I get what he's saying sometimes, because you see it. It takes him a while to get going, and that kind of momentum takes it into the game, obviously adrenaline and stuff like that. But for me personally, I think this could come into their hand, like playing their hands a good bit, because you look at it, came off the high of playing Madrid, and as you said, we probably would have suffered like a dump against Livingston. Kind of like not like we wouldn't have won the game, but not our usual fairy selves. And you kind of get to put that game behind you, recover properly, and then play again like in a tough venue like a Warsaw, where we played for Boric's testimonial, not so recently. But I mean, we do have history against Shakhtar Donetsk. They seem to be like a Barcelona and AC Milan in terms of how many times that they appear in our group. And just to touch upon some of the matches, I mean, I'm not going to go too far in depth, because I know you're doing your Champions League rewinds as well, so we'll look forward to that on the show.
Help me do a wee bit of extra research for them later, so let's go for it.
But I think in total we've played them 4 times. We've won our 2 home games and lost our ties both away, which again points to the bad European form we have away from home. But just to touch upon the last home game I had with them, and if I run through the lineup and just talk about some of these players, we had Boric in nets, funny enough, Caldwell, John Kennedy, when he could play, what a fantastic defender. McManus, Lee Naylor, Hartley, McGeady, Scott Brown, my favourite player, Yuri Jarzik, Finnegar Hesselink.
One goal he scored that night as well,
He did. Scott McDonald, and then the aforementioned Massimo Donati came on to get the last minute winner. I mean, when you look back to that team, that victory, looked at it, Jarzik scored in the 45th minute, and Donati scored in stoppage time, 92nd minute. And Brandao, remember their striker, Brandao, he was an absolute machine. He scored for them early on. But looking back in that lineup, I mean, the memories, when you look back at Gordon Strachan's time, we had some fantastic home victories, didn't we?
We absolutely did. And I think that's testament to, when you're reading that team sheet out there, Stephen, one thing that stands out is it's, with the greatest of respect, it is not a team of superstars by any stretch of the imagination. And yet, Gordon's still, I believe, the only Celtic manager that's done 3 consecutive seasons in the Champions League, 2 of which we qualified for the last 16, that year being one of them. Gordon Strachan's team, they maybe weren't the easiest on the eye, but my God, they were a fit side and they went right to the end. They never stopped, shall we say, to coin the phrase. But, it's funny you mentioned John Kennedy there. I think that was possibly one of the last games he actually played for Celtic, because he had came back for the horrific injury. He was actually at fault for the goal that night. He got caught out. I think he tried to head it down, and the striker you mentioned just nipped in front and put it beyond Boric. And it was a real smash and grab job how we qualified for the last 16 that year. We had to win that night to have any chance going into the last match. But then we still had to rely on Shakhtar at home losing to Benfica if we didn't pick anything up in the San Siro. And obviously AC Milan, I think they won 1-0 that night. It was a very scrappy game. It wasn't much to write home about. But our old pals for Portugal done us a favour, and they won over in Shakhtar, and that meant that we went through on the head-to-head, I think, or we were a point clear. I can't quite remember. But that night against Shakhtar is one of my favourite ever Champions League nights. It was absolutely incredible. The atmosphere that night was amazing. And I think just because we knew we were up against it, to have any hope of qualifying, we knew that the fans really had to bring it. And obviously you lose that early goal, so it goes a bit flat for a while, but then your old pal, Big Jarosik, right on the stroke of half time. It was an absolute, it was Chris Sutton-esque against Juventus. Right, took it right in the half volley into the top corner, and that just G'd everyone up, and we pummeled them for the second half and just could not get this goal. And then out of nowhere, obviously very similar to the AC Milan game the month before, right in the dying seconds, McGeady, it looks like the ball's going to go out, and McGeady just wraps his foot round it and he just gets it into the box. And Donati, I mean, he even takes a deflection after Donati hits it. It's one of the scrappiest goals you'll ever see. But the end result was just utter bedlam. I mean, I ended up about 4 rows in front of me that night. Yeah, it was incredible, and yeah, that's all you can say. It was a brilliant night, and hopefully, but like you say, though, the away games haven't been as good for us. It's been a bit more traditional Celtic away in Europe where Shakhtar's concerned, but hopefully it's third time lucky on Wednesday.
100%. Did you hear me on the mic there? I thought you muted that.
Giving the missus some dip
here. That's shocking from myself. Like, new headset. But I mean, 100% get what you're saying. Like, the game itself, I remember watching it when Yuri Yarsik popped up in the 92nd minute. You're thinking, wow. I think Gary Caldwell tried to fizz a shot in and deflected back, and he just took it and put it in the bottom corner.
It was just... yeah, it was a total stramash because Shakhtar by that point had all their full team behind the ball, and there's a famous moment after it when the Shakhtar boss isn't very happy at full time, shall we say, and wee Gordon Strachan just keeps sort of pounding his heart, and it's almost as if they say it's because they never, my boys never stop. Do you know what I mean? And it was a great night, and like I said, but even at that, you still thought it's a long shot if we're going to get into the last 16, but I think they were rewarded for their efforts that night, and we became that year. We became the first club to qualify for the last 16, 2 years on the trot. So it was all good.
Yeah, a team full of workhorses, wasn't it? I mean,
absolutely.
Sprinkled with the likes of McGeady, Hasselink, McDonald, and stuff who could produce magic moments. But the rest, I mean, Hartley, an absolute dog in the midfield. Caldwell, McManus knew the rules. Do you know what I mean? So it was just a workman-like team. I mean, if you can win against teams like that with like Lee Naylor playing left back, you know you're onto something. So we'll take that. And in terms of the game coming up, one thing I do want to touch upon, they're in unfamiliar territory, so we have to go to Poland to play them. And you kind of look at it, and it's away form and that type of stuff, and we know the old hoodoo. But for some reason, I don't get that same kind of inkling with Postecoglou. I can't feel that we're going to implode away from home all the time. I mean, we did some great showings last season against Betis and Leverkusen and things like that in Europa League, and I think Shakhtar are probably on a similar level to that. So, but is it a concern for you? I mean, I know they've lost a lot of their Brazilian type players. I know they've took advantage of the contract breaking situation with the whole conflict over there, and I know most of their players are Ukrainian, and an ex-Celtic player, Marian Shved, who has scored 3 goals in 2 games, 2 in the Champions League and 1 in the previous league game. So they're in a bit of form, but what way are you feeling into it?
I think, like you say, and Shakhtar are one of the perfect textbook examples there, poor away for them, especially that second year. And like you said, funnily enough, Lee Naylor and Mark Wilson had absolutely brutal games that night. I think that was the opening game, or certainly the opening away game of that campaign. And we were 2-0 down after 10 minutes, and you already know it's game over. It's just damage limitation after that. And I think, but going back to 2004, I think when we first drew them, it was very much the same thing. Obviously, they were a bit more an unknown quantity at that point, and we thought we were going to get our first win, and they sort of ran over the top of us again. And obviously, then you start finding out more about them, and like you say, I think they're sort of quite an oil-rich club. The way they were bankrolled at that time, and they were able to take advantage of these sort of Brazilian work permit rules. So they were there's kind of no idiots by any stretch of the imagination, and they've turned us over a couple of times away from home. But like you say, Stephen, I do agree that last year, although 2 of the 3 matches ended in defeat away from home, Betis, Real Betis, we done very well. Just that little bit of poor game management cost us, and we played very well in Leverkusen as well. But and it was just they managed to get us get over the line in the end. But even look back to before that. Obviously, we just disregard everything about the COVID season. Nothing of that counts. But the year before that, obviously, Lenny got us 10 points in the Europa League against a team, sort of the likes of Lazio and players like. We've had some good nights away from home in Europe in recent years. So I'm sort of hopeful that it's more that kind of forum that continues rather than the aforementioned, textbook Celtic away from home in Europe that kind of jinxed us for so long. Like you say, and like you said, with Postecoglou at the helm and the forum we're in now, I'm certainly hopeful that we can take something from the game.
I mean, for me, like I said it in the previous show on Friday, I think this game's a must-win. because Shakthar started really well. They're already on 3 points, so effectively, if you get a draw, they're 3 points ahead. They're on 4, we're on 1, so we're kind of on the back foot. I mean, I don't think it's a bit harsh for me that the Cesc must win, because we spoke about it when the groups are drawn. You're like Real Madrid, you're thinking free hit, that usual term. The free hit, see if you get a point, that's a bonus. RB Leipzig and Shakhtar Donetsk, two similar level teams, I think, let's be honest, with us as well. I don't know what your feelings are. I mean, you're looking at it, we rightly spoke. I mean, Fernandinho used to play for Shakhtar Donetsk. Douglas Costa used to play for Shakhtar Donetsk. So they've had some absolute ballers before in the past, but I think that the current team they have is a bit weak in terms of not having that flair, that kind of Brazilian like kind of state, and obviously what's going on over there. So it's a bit for us to take advantage of. And what's your opinion on that? Because of what the previous show, a lot of people said a draw, but I don't think that's good enough for me.
Yeah, well, obviously the big worry would be that if Shakhtar were to win the game, then they'd be 6 points ahead of us, with 4 games to go, and obviously those matches have still to be at Celtic Park. But you're spot on, Stephen. Obviously, anything you got from Madrid is a bonus, but the other 3 teams are sort of fighting it amongst themselves. So it's really important that you don't fall behind with them too soon. Obviously, Shakhtar have taken points off Leipzig so far, so that's great. But if we were then able to, because you would maybe assume that Real Madrid are going to be pretty comfortable at home in the Bernabeu against Leipzig. So, yeah, it is important. At the very, very least, I think we should be looking to try and take a point for this game, because you don't want to fall too behind. Joe, you're absolutely bang on. Play for the win. I think that's the only way we know. Ange is never going to just hope for a point. He's going to go out there, and rightfully, with the idea to win the game, because we've definitely got the players. We're definitely in the form that means that we can go out there and believe that we can win the game. And were we to do so, it would just breathe a whole new sort of lease of life into our campaign. It was a great experience last Tuesday, but ultimately we didn't come away with anything. So you want to get some points on that board, especially if you can pick them up away from home, because it does.
Yeah,
and to a sort of extent, it can take a little bit of that nervousness off the home games. Maybe that's sometimes the problem with the fans at home. Sometimes it's because it's a home game, because it's all, you're like, well, we're never going to get points away from them, so we need to win tonight. There's always that little bit of nervousness. So if anything we can do to alleviate that pressure, I think we definitely should be looking to win the game.
It's just a testament again back to like Ange Postecoglou bringing that level of confidence. If they bring the comments in again, Charles Smith can definitely see us scoring 100%. Paul Dat, if we win both our home games, we should finish third. If we can get a result away, we could well finish second. And again, I like that mindset, but I think the games home and away against Leipzig and Donetsk are winnable. That's my opinion. We've seen the team across the city absolutely annihilate Leipzig, and I know not to go off a kind of past form, and obviously that was last season, and this, they've just recently announced a new manager, Rose again. He's back in. So they're going to have that new manager bounce, which is kind of, you have to be wary of that. Do you know what I mean? A lot of teams kind of bounce up and they're on an upward kind of form. And I know the won their game there in the weekend as well. So they will be picking up a bit. But in terms of that, we talked about hopes and stuff on the podcast previously. And you look at it, and the more you think, the more your mind wanders. I think you're like, if we win here, if we do this, if we do that, is it a case of getting into this game, shutting out the outside noise, like Postecoglou linked with a move to Brighton, all that type of stuff, keep it blank and play your best team, just go all in attack? Is that what you would do? Because personally, I would have the likes of Maeda starting, Jada, and if Kyogo's fit and firing, put in for the middle and just go for it, because as I said, it's a must win. We need the points on the board, we need to be competitive in this group and not there to make up the numbers.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what Ange will do. As I say, he doesn't have he never sets his team up to only play for a draw or try and soak up pressure or anything like that. And that's one of the things we love about him. He plays the Celtic way, and that's what our way is, to attack. It's the best form of defence, and but we're also looking pretty good at the back as well. But any team with the likes of Kyogo, like you say, Matt O'Reilly, Cal McGregor, Jota, and full flow, we've got every right to feel confident. And I think this team don't seem to be too handicapped by previous Celtic sides, poor form away from home in Europe. And I can't remember who it was that said in the comments, but it's important to obviously win our home games. but it is quite important as well, because the three teams are sort of quite closely matched, that we really, if we want to look at finishing second, then you really do want to pick up some points away from home. And what better time to do it than Wednesday night?
Monty comes in here with an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
We are generally an experienced side, European terms, and I don't expect us to come out of this group. Now, I noticed in the comments he's getting a lot of hate. Now, I don't know if it's obviously what he's saying here, but sometimes different opinions is fine. Fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that a worry to you that we're a bit naive, a bit in the European stage? I mean, you look at the team, you go through it. The Hearts obviously played there. Juranovic is no mug. I don't think he knows all the street kind of games and the Croatia International. Carter Vickers maybe. I know Jens. I think he'll be a bit inexperienced, and Taylor, vice versa. That, but is it a concern for yourself? What Monty's saying in terms of inexperience?
It's a fair point he makes, because relatively speaking, a lot of the sides, this will be their first joint. It'll certainly be their first joint at the big time. In the Champions League. I know we've obviously got a bit of experience in the Europa League, but the Champions League's a whole different ball game, and the standard the opposition. Although, like you say, Shakthar, we're talking about how we want to win the game and stuff. Monty's right. We've had our fingers burned a few times. We've had many a night against Anderlecht and Alaborg and teams like that, when we just think, yeah, this is when we're going to go and run over the top of them, and we've been left with eggs on our face. So I think he's absolutely bang on in terms of having in terms of a supporter's point of view, being a bit sort of cautious about you want don't want to temper the optimism too much, but just maybe being a bit more realistic. But I think my response to that would be, I think he's right in terms of experience, but I just think at this moment in time, the way the place we're in and the way we're playing, I think as fans, and the way that Ange is inevitably going to set us up to play, provided we don't do our classic and concede 2 goals in the first 10 minutes, I think we've got every chance of getting something for this game.
Yeah, 100%. I don't like to obviously draw back to it, but you say inexperience, and there's a couple of supporters coming up with what they saying. You say inexperience, and you look at the likes of teams like Bodo Glimt, for example. Wouldn't say they were European top dogs, but they knew how to get results. And I think Joe Finley comes in. Monty is right, inexperienced, but I get a vibe for this team. They don't give a fuck about things. They got ability wins, 100%. And again, Shawnee Boy comes in. Abada looked like he suffered stage fright versus Real Madrid, but definitely playing on Wednesday. And there's so many different perspectives you could look at this from. And I kind of agree on the Abada one, because he did look a wee bit shell-shocked. And that's fair enough. He's 20 years old. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. A lot of our players are that term inexperienced, but I don't want to draw on it like it's a negative. I think it could be a positive, where you're going into this from a fresh perspective. You're playing your game. You're backing your manager. Your manager's backing you. You're going out in the pitch to win. And if you leave it all out there and you don't come away with the result, fair enough. We're going to support you no matter what. As long as it's not all these wishy-washy excuses like, oh, we're a bit disappointed tonight, the team didn't turn up. The team has to turn up and show what it's worth. And I think so far, under Postecoglou, we've done that. What would you say?
Yeah, I think we have. I mean, obviously, a lot of some of the criticisms will obviously go towards Bodo Glimt, the result last year, but Bodo Glimt didn't just do that to us. Bodo Glimt were last year's, inverted commas, surprise package that weren't really that much of a surprise, because everyone had heard about them and the way they'd been playing, and they'd been set up that way for 2-3 years. So that last year was almost their kind of peak season. And I think, funnily enough, losing to Bodo Glimt, maybe actually going to sound a bit like Ange here, because a few supporters that weren't convinced by him this time last year, when we lost 4-0 to Leverkusen, Ange is quoted as saying that that's the night he knew it was all coming together. His vision was starting to come together at Celtic, and obviously we were behind in the league at that point, and we were dropping. Still hadn't really started putting our winning run together, and folk were going, is this guy having a laugh? But he did say the same thing about Bodo Glimt as well. I think there was a lot of the kind of the accepted narrative was they were a really good team and they've done this to a few clubs and that's it. Whereas, and I think the next question was, is there anything we can learn from Bodo Glimt in terms of the team? And you're half expecting Ange to sort of, because they played similar football, they were just further down in their further down the line in their process. Even I was expecting them to sort of say like, yep, this is the sort of standard we want to be at. but I think that's kind of where I was absolutely 100% bought over with him, because he said something along the lines of, "This is Bodo Glimt's peak. This is they're not.
Yeah.
This is their level." He says they've beat us tonight, and absolutely fair and square. But he says this isn't our level. He says we aspire to be bigger and better than this, and that it doesn't mean that necessarily in a disrespectful way, but that I just thought that's where I was convinced that this guy is here to try and bring back to make the glory days the norm again on the continent, and I think he's here for the long haul to do just that. I think, like you say, we might lose on Wednesday night, and Monty's right. That these guys have still to rack up some more experience in Europe. But I think for what we've learnt so far, I think we're in as good a shape as we can possibly be for an away tie in Europe.
100%. And just to kind of the point to the comments here, I can notice there's a wee bit of an argument going on, but just want to say this is what football being cancelled does to us all. Like, so I mean, we better heat going on, but doesn't knock it in the head. We're all here to have a bit of crack, and we're talking about Celtic Football Club, and we're back in Europe against Shakthar Donetsk. Let's get along, do the talking. Come on, get in these comments again. And a lot of people are saying that, like, I mean, I think Danny Boy actually nailed it. If I can find it again, we are inexperienced in the CL at this club. I've been in the group stages for a while. Next season will be slightly experienced and make a better fist of it. Again, I like that, but it's the mindset for me. I think we can do it this season. There's no reason why we can't qualify from this group. And I think second's the bar. We'll have to be aiming there. And then third, you're getting in the Europa League, which is fair enough. But then you have to make a fist of it and do better than we did last season. There, Granda comes in. I know Celtic are playing great stuff at home, but they have to turn on to Europe 100%. We talked about that last week, and they played Real Madrid, and they got tired after 60 minutes. But I can see the process of it against a Shakhtar, against a Leipzig, who are more at our level. We can cope better with that pressure, that type of environment, because we can match them for 90 minutes. I just think Real Madrid were a level above, and that's fair enough. We'll have to kind of cope with that, hopefully, and we'll kind of round it off there, move into the game itself, and coming to you as who would you rather be, Penn or Taylor?
That's a good one, actually. I'll go Penn, just Penn. For the fact that I write a lot, so I'll go for the Penn.
So Penn, give me your lineup and score prediction.
Right, so I think it'll be Joe Hart and goals. I'm assuming Starfelt's still out, so I think it'll just be the standard back four of Juranovic, Jens, CCV, and Greg Taylor, or Gregory, as our Ross so affectionately calls him. I don't actually think there'll be really any changes from last week. I think Hatate, O'Reilly, and McGregor in the middle of the park. And then that's maybe the only. I think maybe Maeda will start rather than Abada. Jota on the left, and I've not really heard anything to say where Kyogo's fitness is, so it very much could be. Hi, Ricky. Good to hear from you, mate. Good to see you. I think he might start Giakoumakis, just depending on fitness, but it'll be one of the two, obviously. Yeah. And score prediction, I'll say 2-1 Celtic.
2-1 Celtic, and Scott Howe 3-2 or 2 each there. I will go for my lineup: Joe Hart, Juranovic, Carter Vickers, Starfelt, Taylor, McGregor, Hatate, O'Reilly, Jota, Kyogo, and Maeda. I'll go 3-1 Celtic. I think against Real Madrid, when you kind of look back in hindsight and you can kind of go pick players apart, I think we missed his work rate, especially when it came into like the latter parts of that first half. We were tailing off and coming back. I think Maeda would have kept us on the front foot for more longer periods of times. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, obviously, you could play Jota there and Abada, but I think just for now, I would put Jota on the right, Maeda on the left, and the brilliant man himself, Kyogo, through in the middle. Do you know what I mean? I think that there for me, you can win against Shakhtar, not easily, but you can put up a challenge and get the result we need.
Yeah. No, I think so. It's a team more than capable of winning any match, I think. As I say, I think you said you went for Starfelt there as well. I'm not sure if...
Jens.
Oh, but that's what I thought. Maybe you'd seen the news more than me, and maybe Starfelt was fit. I think if Starfelt is fit, he potentially could start, because this might be more of a a sort of physical game. Although there's Kaiser, he's confirming with Starfelt's out for a few weeks, so yeah, I think it'll be Jens. Great minds think alike, Alistair.
And again, just to kind of round it off, and it's been a great podcast. Lots to talk about, good talking points, and people in the comments, whether it's hater or not, it's good to see us talk to each other. Just keep it down a wee level. Do you know what I mean? We're all here to get along and talk Celtic Football Club. And just to remind everybody, our new show, which is bi-weekly with Tony McLaughlin from Celtic Trends, is going to be starting next Thursday. Hopefully, fingers crossed, just to kind of go back into games and looking at stats, analytics, all that kind of side. I'm really interested in it, learning about all that stuff. So it'll be great quality, and hopefully you can all join us for that as well. And the viewer takeover, Kaiser's been on it. The next on it is Jed Thomas, and then Alistair Jack. If you're interested, please come to us on our socials or in the
drop us a wee message.
Yep.
We're not. And if we get, I think as you said, if we get more, if a lot of people come forward say they want to come on, then we might bring it to less than once every 2 months just to get through it. But it's very much a demand. But if anybody wants to come on, get in touch with any of us. We'd love to hear from you.
100%. And also as well the membership option, which is always there for everybody. Kaiser's took it, Danny Boys took it, 99p a month. You get the cracking emojis John's took his time to make, and it's just great fun, and it helps the channel as well produce better content. But Anthony, my pen to my teller, have you enjoyed this one?
Absolutely, mate. As I say, there's with the very little much in the way to talk about football wise. You guys done brilliant on Friday. I really enjoyed the show on Friday. You've done a great job of just kind of trying to keep things ticking over in the absence of any football. But it's great news that the matches during the week are going ahead, and from what I heard today, that the normal service shall resume at the weekend as well. So it's good when you get your weekly or twice weekly content of Celtic. Just in the same way, it's good getting the twice weekly content of the Endless Celts.
100%. And until Friday, when we look back, and hopefully a great result in European football, to everyone who's joined tonight, stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.